Joining me right now is Potomac Wealth Advisors president and founder, Mark Avalone. Mark, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. What's your reaction to all that's going on between the U.S. and China? Is the president right to push back?
Well, of course he's right to push back, and Senator Graham made a good point that this is going to cause some short-term pain. Ultimately, we're going to find out if the American consumer and then the American voter is going to tolerate or stand for that. We're not used to that in a short run here. But the president is looking forward, and he's looking forward to the next decade or two, where if we don't take these stands now, the Chinese are intent on beating us economically, and that's why these talks have broken down. We started to gain a footing. We started to move the ball forward. They didn't like the way that looked. It's not part of their end game. So we have two disparate approaches, and we have to make sure that we have the fortitude to sit through the economic pain that this will inevitably cause.
So what do you do until then? I mean, we got this market nervous every day. I mean, oftentimes by the close, what we saw last week was by the close, things come back. So it feels like there is a belief in this strategy. And yet, do you want to stay out of stocks right now while this fixes itself?
Well, I think the China trade talks is going to be a permanent condition. Even if we get an agreement, it's not going to be one and done. So investors are starting to realize that. They're baking it into their assumptions. And that's why you haven't seen the stock market fall through the floor when we had bad news last week. I think the underlying strength of the U.S. economy is what's giving President Trump the ability to negotiate. And that underlying strength in the economy is keeping a floor, at least for now, with stocks, along with an accommodative Fed. So I don't think investors should run for the door because trade headlines are uncertain. I think it's a new permanent condition that we're going to have to get used to.
So what are you doing in terms of your clients and how you're allocating capital right now? What are you doing in the face of this?
I think you have to look beyond the immediate news noise. There's been so many headlines throughout the duration of this bull market that legitimately could have scared you. It could have been Greek bank failures or Brexit. This China trade talk is real, but it's something we're going to work through. And investors may be able to trade a little bit in the short run, but in the end, it's going to prove to be another blip in, for now, what's a bull market in stocks. And we don't see that ending, especially as long as the Federal Reserve is as accommodative as it is.
Well, that's true, yeah. Well, Senator Rand Paul is raising some concerns about this trade turmoil. Yesterday, he explained why he wants the president to make this deal with China sooner rather than later. Watch this.
My concern is that the great benefits of the tax cut, which have low unemployment and incredible economic growth, could be erased by this tariff war. As we ratchet it up with China, I'm very concerned. However, we're in the middle of this, and the president is playing a negotiating battle with the Chinese, and I think he feels that at this point they can't really back out.
I mean, it is pretty unbelievable that China backed out of all of the things that they had agreed upon in that deal last week.
Yes, and Senator Paul in that interview also went on to say that the benefit of the tax cuts that some of his Kentucky companies have benefited are starting to get eaten away at by the tariffs, and they're at an inflection point. And he went on to say that it was the tax cuts that allowed these companies to have the balance sheet strength to withstand this first round of tariffs. The question is, if they jump them up to 25%, how will American corporations react? Thus far, the tax cut gave retailers a great boost and allowed them to absorb some of these tariff hits. But really what we're going to see is what's going to happen when the tariffs go to 25%. Not even the full effect of the tax cut's going to offset that.
Would you change your mind if the president puts taxes or tariffs on the remaining $350 billion of Chinese goods that are so far not taxed?
Well, if that escalates into something even more vociferous from the Chinese, and then we retaliate, and then we're in an all-out trade war, that could change the global macroeconomic situation. And yes, that would be a cause for reconsideration. But until this thing blows up, I think we should look at it as a series of ongoing negotiations that could go on for years.
All right, Mark, thanks very much for your insights there. Important comments. Mark Avalone joining us there. Meanwhile,